And one of the attendees of that luncheon is Stephen Orlins. He's been on our program quite a bit. He's the president of the National Committee for U.S. China Relations, talking about what needs to be done in order to improve the relationship between the U.S. and China. And Steve, before we head to this lunch, I mean, Peter just outlined some great points that are essentially quite contentious between the two sides. But what kind of atmosphere do you expect inside this luncheon with the president?
Oh, I'm more than an attendee. We're the co-host. The National Committee on U.S. China Relations and the U.S. China Business Council are the co-hosts of this
okay, we stand
luncheon
corrected. That's right, co-host. Okay.
For about 570 attendees. I think, as one of your earlier correspondents said, it's going to be a very warm feeling. These are people, it's people from the business community, from government, from academia, and from the think tank community that are committed to constructive U.S. China relations. These are people who are kind of in the trenches every day, working on making the relationship better between the United States and China.
What do they want to? What do they want to though press with the Chinese president if they get that opportunity at this luncheon?
Well, I think a lot of the same things that the Obama administration has been pressing. You know, the joint communique yesterday talked about the delinking of indigenous innovation from government procurement, which I think should be the headline of this trip. But certainly this audience is very concerned, given it's composed of a number of exporters to China, that they be given fair access to the enormous government contracts that China is letting. And that's not only the central government, but the provincial and the local governments. So that's going to be a big issue. Protection of intellectual property remains a big issue, and we'll all be pressing that. But I expect President Hu's speech to really talk about the progress that China's made and how important constructive relations are between the U.S. and China.
Steve, have you been at any event before where you've either hosted or attended with the Chinese president?
Yes, I've previously hosted events for the Chinese president, for the Chinese vice premier, for the Chinese vice president, and again, these are done in order to have the Chinese leader directly address the community that's concerned with China.
Sure. The reason why I ask you that, though, Steve, is I want to get a sense if you've felt in any way the attitude changing towards the Chinese in the time that you have met or been at events with President Hu.
You mean the Chinese, the U.S. community's view changing?
Exactly. Have you seen attitudes change at all up to now towards the Chinese?
Well, what's happened over the last 30 years is China has become much more core to U.S. companies' business interest. Once upon a time, one could almost call it a frolic and detour. You could go to China if you made some money, fine. If you didn't make some money, fine. Now it constitutes a substantial part of the revenues and profits of many of the major U.S. multinationals. So it's really become much more fundamental to their business strategy. And that's the change. When it becomes more fundamental, they are paying a lot more attention. And when there is an issue, such as indigenous innovation or protection of intellectual property, they are raising that directly with the Chinese and with the U.S. government. And the U.S. government is representing our interests when they're raising this with President Hu.
Okay. Steve, we're going to leave it there.